Welcome to another episode of the Agronomy Highlights podcast. I'm your host, Ryan, and as always, I'm joined here today with our co host, Justin Brackenridge. Now, we have a little bit of a different episode here for you today, and we're kicking off season three. So you can call this maybe a kickoff of the new year, the new season. And we're going to talk a little bit about our vision for this podcast, and we're going to take a moment to kind of introduce ourselves and how we ended up here today, because there's been a lot of changes over the last season if you've been listening. So yeah, Justin, what do you think? Are you excited for season three?
Yeah, so I kind of am. And so if like you said, if you've been listening, you know that I kind of came in periodically in season two, right, with the departure of Dwayne Miller. And he and Joey started the podcast, Joey Akins. And when Dwayne left, then I kind of backfilled a little bit of that. There is no replacing Dwayne, so let's be straight with that first. But I kind of came in temporarily for that, and then when Joey left, graciously Ryan stepped in as the main host, kind of setting all of this up, and I'm still able to hang in here as the kind of co-host for now, and I'm looking forward to it. I enjoy doing the podcast, learning things and interacting with people I typically wouldn't. So I think it's really fun to start a fresh season and kind of be able to put our spin and our vision on where we see the next 10, 12 months going.
Sure, I just kind of inherited your cooperation here and kind of forced you to become a main host here, huh?
Oh, that's okay. I enjoy doing it. And again, you're doing most of the work and I get to come along. But one of the things that we really didn't do is take much time to introduce ourselves or kind of discuss this change. And so I think we're going to do this a little bit of a kickoff to the year. And Ryan, why don't you tell the rest of the listeners or the folks that are joining us today, maybe for the first time, we like new listeners, but even the ones that have been with us, tell them about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So as Justin's kind of been talking, there's been a lot of changes to this podcast, and now that it's me and Justin, we're trying to drive the boat where we want to now. And I just wanted to start by saying Joey, who was on here for a really long time and was kind of the I guess you could call it a forefather and the main host for a very long time of this podcast. He's doing well. He just is at a new job now. So that's kind of how we inherited this. So a little bit about me, because again, at that transition period, I kind of popped in like Justin did as a temporary host here or there with Joey, and then once he left, it kind of just became ours, and we never really took the time to introduce ourselves. So I come from a background in plant pathology. Again, my name's Ryan Spellman. I use that in the beginning of most episodes now, but I have started in plant pathology and got to agronomy and extension work through that. So my humble beginnings started not even in an agricultural area. So, if some of my questions during some of these episodes seem misinformed, you can blame that for it. Okay. So I grew up in Massachusetts, in a suburban area, and I actually didn't have a lot of involvement in agricultural growing up, but I really loved biology. And I was always trying to grow things in my backyard. I was always catching critters in my backyard. I just loved everything that I could kind of engage with the natural world. So I went to college in New Hampshire, at the University of New Hampshire. And while I was there, I was studying a degree in general biology. And kind of as I went through the years, you kind of got to pick all of the different classes you wanted to take. So I took ones on ornithology, on agricultural related fields, and I just kind of was drawn into agriculture. So I took a class on fungi, and I took classes on general botany, and I just kind of got into this world of understanding how ecology and agriculture combine. So that's how I got involved in plant pathology, and I got involved in a lab that was doing work in up in New Hampshire. We didn't really have field and forage crops, so I was doing a lot of work in orchard production and in greenhouse horticulture production, studying the diseases that impact plants. And we were looking at a lot of different biological methods to control those diseases. So that's kind of how I got my start in agriculture. And, I wandered a little bit, kind of finding my role, and I found myself at Penn State for grad school, where I studied mycotoxicology and studied corn diseases, and that's kind of how I got into field and forage crops. And then I ended up in my role in extension here, and that's kind of the story of how I ended up being an agronomist with Penn State, and that's where my background is. So a love for plant pathology, for mycology, turned into a love for agriculture. Now I get to just study all of the fascinating things that are happening in agriculture. So there you go. That's maybe more than you wanted to hear about my origin story, but that's who I am, and I still have a huge love for plant pathology in my role as an agronomist. Justin, why don't you give us the backstory of Justin Brackenridge, now that I took up so much time talking about myself,
Oh, it's
which we
always great to
do a
learn
lot
stuff
of.
about the people around you, right? Mine mine's a little less exciting, I think. I grew up in West Virginia. I didn't necessarily grow up on a farm farming, but I grew up out in the country and had the pleasure and the opportunity of working with a lot of farmers as I'd call it a laborer, baling hay, working livestock, cutting wood, doing all of the things that you do. So I got a very strong appreciation for what that was during my summers and during my school year. Um, my family was always involved in agriculture in some capacity, and so that kind of where it came from. But initially, my undergraduate is in animal and nutritional sciences. And so I had aspirations of working more with animals. But as I went through college, I realized I had a very interesting and unique connection to plants. I don't know why, but I really enjoy plants. And I think that their involvement and their connection to the environment is very useful and very interesting to us, and something that's often underappreciated in our landscape and in our society. And so that kind of drew me more towards the connection between animals and plants. So that got me to agronomy. Quick step from agronomy was to Morgantown to Butler, Pennsylvania, where I started, was about an hour and 45 minutes. So got a great opportunity to work for Penn State. And now I'm actually in Greene County. So I went from West Virginia to kind of central West Pennsylvania. Now I'm back almost down to the bottom of Pennsylvania, almost to West Virginia again, after almost 7 years with Penn State. Really like it, really enjoy my job, love the work that we get to do here, the knowledge we get to gain, the knowledge we get to share, and the potential impact we get to have to people is unrivaled.
Yeah, I can unravel. There you go. I can totally second that. I mean, it's so I guess I didn't finish by saying I ended up in Blair County, which is in central Pennsylvania, and that's where I'm based out of as an agronomist for Penn State. And you talked a little bit about how you at least were in an agricultural area, and kind of growing up you worked on farms as maybe a laborer. And I when I started this job, that was probably the I, I took a very academic route to get here, right? And so I had a lot of ideas about how to manage diseases in field crops, how to farm. And then in this job you really get to learn from people on how farming happens and how to connect the research that's going on and all the science to what actually happens out there. And that's what I love about doing this job is that constant learning process of, at this point I'm learning a lot more from my farmers oftentimes. And sometimes I might think I'm sharing of my own education and knowledge.
So coming up, right, we're starting season 3. One of the things that I notice happening with me when we start developing podcasts is that I love forages, right? Growing up in West Virginia, working with livestock, working with cattle, sheep, goats, growing a lot of grass has always been small hay, that's always been my passion, right? Grass is my passion. But what I find is I like to drift back to talk about that a lot. That's where I'm most comfortable and that's where I'm my happiest is when I get to talk to producers about hay and pasture. And so some of the things that I want to do this year are work with bringing in some people maybe livestock based, right? Include some of that into the direction we're going to go. Not only just focus on grass, which maybe I need to have a forage podcast only, but continue to talk about things like corn, maybe some of our summer sedan, sorghum sedan, our summer annual, some of that, but hear from livestock people and how that kind of livestock forage thing can interact and do a very nice thing for some of our row crop systems. So that's something I want to bring to this and kind of implement into us over the next 10 to 12 months. What are your thoughts for the next year?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think that would be wonderful. Again, I love one of the things that I love about the podcast is you get to learn about so much. We get to just sit here and maybe ask some of the foolish questions at times, but then we really get to pick the brains of so many experts that we wouldn't have the opportunity to otherwise. So forage crops really until I took this job, I really I didn't interact with them much and I didn't have much of a knowledge. So I always love the opportunity to bring that into the show and learn a whole lot more because I mean most of our farmers in Pennsylvania they have hay fields and I think it's an important part of coming from the agronomist perspective, it's a really important part of the crop rotation, should we say, that you include some of these forages, and a lot of our field crops are going into supporting livestock. So it's really that connection is inherent with everything that we're doing. And so I would welcome more episodes on forage production and yeah, I have a lot to learn in that area. So yes, I'm all for that. Yeah, as for myself, I think again bringing my background back in, the more we can talk about pathology, I would love to have some more disease folks, but I understand that might not be a priority for some. So another thing, it kind of one of the things that was my focus always as a pathologist is how do we not just implement pesticides in managing diseases, but how do we manage the agro ecosystem? Okay, so even when I was doing plant pathology research, I was looking at it through a very agronomic way, and I was always really interested in how do cropping rotations, how does your field management impact uh, plant stress and how disease starts and how pests get into your field and all of these questions surrounding how is your field and ecosystem. So I love those kinds of topics, and if we can get more episodes going in here that have to do with alternative cropping systems, talking about the influences of the agro ecosystem. I know I've been talking Justin's ear off of putting together a mycorrhizae episode, which is one of my favorite things, looking at the agricultural system as an ecosystem. And I think we can bring a whole lot of different topics in on that. And I think that's somewhere where a lot of us can learn a lot about how do we look at our systems differently. And maybe that's a vague way to say what I want more episodes to be on, but that's kind of where my head's at.
So one of the things we're certainly doing, and it'll be coming up really soon, is almost every episode we ask any of our listeners to reach out and give us ideas of what do you want to hear about, right? We like doing this, but I would say the most challenging part of this is coming up with things that we think you want to hear, right? So, but that's where we kind of go down these rabbit holes of the things that we like. But one of our listeners actually kind of gave us the idea of why not interview some of your specialists and some of your researchers at the university for part of this emerging technology and ag innovations thing, and so we're really looking forward to doing this and working with different specialists and kind of making these mashup episodes of, hey, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? And how are we going to use this in the fields, in the states, for our producers? What does this mean to us? And Ryan, you want to talk a little bit about some of that we've got coming up?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, to kick off the first season, We have a two-parter coming up, and it's going to be exactly that. We're going to have two of our specialists talk about drone spray technology, specifically with fungicide applications. We're going to have another specialist come and talk to us about ExactApply technology. So you might have heard of John Deere's See and Spray technology. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about all of this from a research perspective. Talk to our own specialists, and I should say in the world of Penn State Extension, a specialist is just the folks at the university that have PhDs and are the expert in and lead full research programs in a specific niche, right? And so we're going to have two people to talk about that, and then we're going to have another one of our specialists talk about different nutrient tools like variable rate prescriptions and nitrogen recommendation tools. So that's what we have immediately to look forward to in the early part of this season. And again, yeah, I think I would love to play around with new formats of doing this podcast. I think I love the interview style that we've done historically, and I think there's a place for that when we get a guest that we can have on and talk about one big topic all at once. But I think we'll play around with some of these other episodes where we have multiple people on from Penn State and we can have a conversation about a specific topic. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I think that's what we've got to do, right? I think we're having fun with
Mm-hmm.
this. I think we're learning. I hope we're getting positive feedback. And again, reach out to us.
Yeah.
Let us know if there's something that you're listening to or something you want to hear. And by all means, we'd be happy to try it out and see if we can figure out a way to make this better for our listener, better for the way that we can share and disseminate information, because that's what this is all about, right? It's about us continuing to do something, but getting information to the people the way that they want it in a timely manner and in a way that's digestible. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to a lot of what we've got going on. So with that, I think, we're ready to start season 3, and
Yeah.
thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thank you guys for sticking around, and we're going to keep experimenting with it, and please do reach out to us. I'll say my email, if you want to reach out directly to me, is rms6953@psu.edu.
And
So
mine, it's JUB as in boy 1489 at psu.edu.
yeah, and so if you look up our names online, you'll probably find the same information. But please do reach out to us, and even just to let us know, who are you? We want to know who our listeners are. And if you have any recommendations, any topics that you want to hear about, we're happy to um to put that together for you all. So and we really thank you for your support. It really is great to know, and it's really fun to look at the map to see where we're hearing people listening to this podcast. It's all around the world. So we'd love to hear from you. And just before I sign off, there are a few formats that people have suggested to us. So if you want to hear more about these, let us know about that. But one of them is we're starting to do more research updates, and even if there's a new paper that comes out, send it our way. Maybe we can interview the person who released that paper, and talk about a new finding in a study. Another format is a book club. So maybe there's a new book in agronomy that comes out, whether it's a weed identification guide. Maybe we can have the people who wrote that book come on and talk about their book. So we're open to a lot of formats. So just really reach out to us and let us know what you want to hear more of. All right, cool. Well, Justin, anything more to say? I think we've talked about too much. We never get the chance to just talk amongst ourselves. So maybe they're going to be sick of it now.
No, I think that's a great place to leave them, and hope they stick with us for the rest of the year.
All right, thank you guys, and we'll see you again on another episode of the Agronomy Highlights podcast.